All right. Hi, Caitlin. Thanks for meeting with me today. I really appreciate your time, and I'm really excited to get a little bit of your opinion on the topic of work-life balance. From what I understand, you've been nominated for the 30 Under 30 award through Elevate magazine. So I'd like to hear a little bit about who you are, what you do, and what contributed to your nomination for this award.
Well, my name obviously is Caitlin Sellers. It's funny that we have the same name and it's spelled the same, which is pretty cool.
I know.
So a little bit about me. I am born and raised in Charlotte. I'm actually a fourth generation Charlottean, so certainly a rare breed. But I went to UNC Charlotte as well, so a lot of people are like, "Oh man, you never left." But the benefit of being raised in Charlotte and going to school in Charlotte is that I've been able to build an incredible network of like-minded professionals. So started off kind of in the marketing world, worked in the restaurant industry, worked my way through college. When I graduated college, it was during the recession, so it was really difficult to find opportunities in a marketing world, so I could just kind of took whatever I could find. Ended up working at an agency in Shelby, North Carolina, for a little less than a year. Ended up doing some freelancing. Started off doing social media stuff, and this is probably 2012. Then I met a guy who owned an agency in Charlotte, started doing some work for him, ended up working my way up to a chief of staff and sales position, helping turn a lifestyle agency into a high growth agency.
Wow.
So that was very exciting. We hired a bunch of local people. We were able to get into a co-working space and then into an office space. But at the end of the day, like the owner it was better for him to be in a lifestyle position. So then we had to essentially let go of our employees, and then we had to get out of the office space. So at that point, I went into my business full time. During those years, in 2013, when I was doing my freelancing, to back up a little bit, I was going to all these networking events, and I just never really found something that provided value for me. I felt like I was always having these empty conversations. I was just passing out business cards. I wasn't really learning a whole lot. It was hard to find other women who were in the same place as me career-wise. And so I stumbled across an organization called Labo League, which is Say that again?
Oh, no, go on.
It's a career-minded professional groups targeted toward millennials. So it's LEVO. It's a Latin term for elevate. So like elevate your career, elevate your life. So in 2013, it came to Charlotte, and myself and another co-leader have been running it ever since. We have over 600 members in Charlotte now, and we've planned and executed over 50 events. So we've been...
Wow. That's great.
So I'm still doing Labo, still running my own business. I took a full-time job in March as the digital marketing director and account executive. So doing some business development and some online marketing stuff. And then I'm also on the board for the Plaza Midwood Business Association. So
that's incredible.
Oh, and I just got engaged, so I'm planning a wedding.
Oh, congratulations. That's wonderful. When's the big day?
Next August. So.
Oh, okay. So you have some time to plan.
Yeah. Yes.
So I think what's unique about you is I think you're one of my first interviewees who has done a significant percent of your work thus far as freelancing. And that seemed to just kind of bloom into something bigger. It became a company that you manage. So maybe you could elaborate a little bit more on that, what you think is unique about work-life fit for a freelancer. I'm not a freelancer, but I think it would be really helpful for my audience to understand.
Yeah, so I became a freelancer out of necessity, really. As like I have to pay my student loans, I have to I have to pay my bills. I have to do life. And so it was just it wasn't like I had this grand plan of starting my own business and breaking out of corporate. It was like I have to survive. So I guess since 2000, so the past few years, it's been a big from, feeling like I have to do this to like, what do I like to do? What do I want to do? What brings me joy? What energizes me? And so at the end of the day, I guess rest when you need to rest. Schedule just as much time for yourself as you have to schedule for your work. Some weeks are busier than others. Some weeks it's more personal. Some weeks it's more work. But carve out time in your calendar. Like I live and die by my Google Calendar. So if it's not scheduled there, it's not happening. So I try to carve out, either, working out with my friends or I used to carve out walking my dog, but now I just do it. It's like, I'm going to go for a walk.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's one of those things about being intentional with your time and understanding that your time is valuable. And so if you're not making money, then you should be making yourself happy. Or you should be making yourself happy making money. Another thing that I do in terms of like productivity and work-life balance is I'm a big whiteboarder. So I have to-dos. Actually, you can kind of see it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So what does the blue versus the black mean?
The blue was like my initial list and the black was like what I added to the list. And so then what I do is I every day have like a sticky note or in my phone, and I'm like, okay, what are the top 3 to 5 most important things that I have to get done today? Whether it's going to the bank, whether it's going to the grocery store, whether it's writing a press release or doing a wireframe for a website or making a certain amount of calls or scheduling a certain amount of appointments. Or just cleaning out my email.
So you're a lister.
I'm definitely a lister. And I'm a color coder. So I have super ADHD. So growing up, my mom helped me really figure out what were some coping skills to keep myself organized because I'm easily distracted. So it was like a lot of different color pens and highlighters and sticky notes and whatever creative thing I could kind of tangibly get my hands on to keep myself moving.
So I kind of want to work with that a little bit. So what do you do to tune out your distractions? I only ask maybe perhaps for myself is, I work in management consulting, and they say that multitasking, is not effective, but sometimes you find yourself doing it out of necessity. So stay within your lane throughout your day.
I think it depends on what you're working on. Like as a creative, sometimes it doesn't make sense for me to sit down and force myself to write a full blog post or create a guide or whatever. Sometimes it's like, okay, I'm going to focus for 30 minutes or 15 minutes on getting my ideas on paper. And then I'm going to spend 15 or 30 minutes on engaging on social media or writing a proposal. So, I guess I time block things. And then as soon as I feel like I've reached the potential for that time, then I kind of move on to the next thing until I feel like I'm inspired to go back to it.
The voice of experience.
It's one of those things where it's like, yeah, you don't want to go from like 2 minutes on email to doing your outline to washing the dishes to taking your dog out. But at the same time, if you're not being your best self in that moment, then you probably need to go to a different activity.
So how is the structure of your day? Would you say you have a typical 9 to 5? It doesn't sound like that you do.
Definitely not. I am actually not a big morning person, and I've read so much about people saying like, "Oh, if you're not a morning person, you're not productive."
Well,
But
thanks for meeting me in the morning.
oh, I mean, I'm saying like I'm not one that would naturally get up at 6 a.m. So I like to get up, like between 8 and 9. And then I usually like to get my day going between 9 and 10. And then, I mean, if I have to get up, or if I've got, like yesterday, I had a networking event that started at 7:30. We had to set up, and then 8:30 was when the event started. So it was just one of those, you got to do what you got to do kind of things. But in terms of preference, I would much rather get my day started a little bit later, work throughout the day, schedule appointments. So I kind of like to kill two birds with one stone. So if I can get a lunch appointment, or if I can schedule Skype calls to keep things efficient, so I'm not having to travel, take as much time traveling. And then I do a lot of networking events. So I probably go to anywhere from 1 to 3 networking events a week. And then I usually get my best work done at night. So after I've been able to, like, between, I don't know, 5 and 7:30, have some self time, spend some time with my family. Then I usually like to kind of get back in the saddle around 8 o'clock. And so I would say at least 2 or 3 times a week, I'm probably working 8 to 1 at night. And that's where I grind. That's where I like get shit done, and that's when I'm like
Hashtag get shit done.
Yeah, hashtag get shit.
So I'm gathering quite a few best practices from you, or perhaps even lessons learned. So it sounds like you have a heightened sense of self, and you very much understand when you are most productive. And you kind of cater to, that a little bit in how you manage your schedule. You're not going to force something and wake up at 5 because everyone says that you're going to be more productive. You do what's good for Caitlin, right?
Yeah. I mean, if you take a 30-minute nap at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, you just got to take a nap.
A siesta, I know. I could be very happy in Spain, I think, doing that. But and it sounds like you have a couple other strengths going for you. You're very good at networking, and you understand how to use social media very well. But what do you think are your best strengths, and how you manage your priorities?
So I'm a delegator by nature. I like if you were to ask me my management style, I would say I delegate. So it's one of those things where you are the company you keep, and you're only as good as the network that's around you. So kind of being willing to like get things off your plate, being willing to say no, or being open to rescheduling things. I think so many people are worried that they're going to come off mean or bitchy or flaky or whatever it is, but like you can't apologize for surviving.
Right.
So if you've got a family emergency, you got to take care of that.
Yeah. So let's actually go back to that. I heard you mention earlier in sort of the story of the development of your company that there was a time when you had built and had quite a few staff working underneath you. And then one of your partners had a life event, and then you had to downsize very quickly. So just from your experience, and maybe it can be generalized, what do you think can help somebody cope with moments like that, or try to stay sane and to remember to keep balance during those times?
I mean, I leaned on like my loved ones a lot. I was very open and transparent about where I was at and what I was going through and how I was dealing with that stuff. I also would say that you don't put all your eggs in one basket. So even though I was working a full-time job, I still had a side hustle because at the end of the day, things happen and you have to be willing to pivot and change, and things aren't always going to be perfect. So as a manager in that situation, I kind of had to recognize what's best for my employees and how can I prepare them for this rapid, swift change. So how can I help them get a job? And then, my partner obviously was having a difficult time, so I had to help him through that. And we kind of had to take a break just because we had to figure out what was best for us. And he and I are still great friends. I respect him so much. We still do work together. But you have to recognize what's best for you. And at the end of the day, you can't kind of worry about how it's going to come off to other people.
Did you always know what was best for you? I think, there's books out there like Born for This, and there's a lot of books that help people determine what that self-actualization means. Did you always know what you wanted to do and what you were good at, or did you kind of go through some process and arrive at that?
So I always knew I wanted to be a teacher. I thought I wanted to be a teacher, like a middle school teacher, like English or history or something like that. But I have so much respect for teachers that are, pretty much always working, and they don't get taken care of the way that they should. So when I came to that realization of I'm probably not going to be the traditional teacher, I knew that I had a strength in public speaking. I knew I had strengths in working well with others and collaboration. I did like a lot of theater and stuff in school.
So that helps with public speaking, I'm sure.
Yeah. So, I knew I had a knack for that. I hated taking tests because I have ADD, so it's hard for me. I was not a test taker. I was much more, I would much rather put together a presentation or do a project. And so recognizing that and figuring out, okay, how do I apply that to my career and what works with that? And so that's been sort of a trial and error, I've had to screw up a lot. I've had to have people tell me that, I messed up and it wasn't working, and I hurt their feelings, and I could have approached that better. And so I think listening to yourself, but also listening to others. And actually, I was talking to a girl last night. Let me see if I can find this quote. You don't really understand what people understand until you understand that they understand. So
I'll try to follow that.
Yeah, but it's kind of one of those things where you got to understand yourself, but you also have to understand how other people are feeling, and you have to make sure that other people understand where you're coming from. So
I think there's a certain amount of EQ that comes with maturing, right? And being able to apply that to a workplace. That can definitely factor into someone's success and how happy they are with their network. Family and friends are a very important part of that balance.
Yeah, well, and I think also I wasn't always managing people, but I was always a natural leader. I was always the one who I like to take charge and organize and delegate and make sure holding people accountable, and so I think that naturally just transitioned into where I am now.
Okay. And I want to talk a little bit about your savvy with social media, and I'm only going to bring this up because I think that work-life balance is a sort of a hot topic these days. So I think because you are in this management role at such a young age, given your number of successes and being a 30 under 30, what is your view of how work-life balance is changing and why it's become a topic that's important to young folks especially, and if you think there's sort of a generational gap that's occurring socially?
So that's kind of a
It's a loaded question, but I think
Um,
I'd like your perspective on it and perhaps why you think it's become a topic of importance to some people.
Well, I think for millennials in particular, we've grown up with this technology. Like, we were doing AIM and AOL and The Sims, and, we had all these things kind of to keep us busy. So, naturally going to social or naturally going to a virtual call like we're having, or naturally going to a quick text message, those things are a lot easier for us because it's like second nature. Whereas other generations, it's hard to wrap their head around it because that's not the channel of communication that they naturally go to. And because things are changing so quickly, it's very difficult for them to learn a skill and then it change, and they have to figure out, how it changed and how to do it better. The full-time job I took is a company that does wireless technology. So they do fully managed campus Wi-Fi, and they specialize in senior living communities. So I went from like teaching people how to do online marketing to teaching seniors how to text message and Skype their families and use Google Drive over Microsoft Office or something like that. So, seeing it from, high school and college students to people starting out in their career to people transitioning to people feeling comfortable with themselves, all the way up to the Gen X and the boomers who have been there, done that, bought a T-shirt, wanting to mentor, and then working with seniors who, I was working with an 86-year-old woman who her family got her a tablet and she was showing me like the dating app that she downloaded, and it's like
that's so cute.
It's incredible what technology can do, but it can also be extremely overwhelming. And so knowing the resources that are available to learn how to get the skills to be successful in an ever-changing technological world, I feel like that as a society we're going to have to figure out a way to bridge that gap.
And I think that you're in a unique position because you are at that management level at a younger age. And maybe you have advice for young folks who need to be able to better communicate up and to manage up so that they can achieve a very good work life. It sounds like because you're a freelancer or your company, you move around a lot, you do proposals. Are you able to work remotely a lot? That's what I gather.
Yeah, so I work from home. I work in coffee shops, co-working spaces. I like to travel a lot, but I also like that human-to-human connection. So being able to spend time with my team, being able to, even if it's a Skype call or something like that, I make it a point, if I'm not meeting them in person, to shake their hand, then I'm at least being able to get these face-to-face interactions with people. Because it's really hard to pick up on social cues or body language or things of that nature versus email or texting or social, anything like that.
So do you maybe have any advice for younger folks who can manage up to have that work locale flexibility as to whether they're working at home or maybe working at a coffee shop? I love working at a coffee shop, and I think that maybe the typical let's collect at our usual office or cubby, right? That typical model that's very 90s and 80s. that's sort of changing. Do you have any advice to younger folk that in managing up to discuss these kinds of expectations with their management?
Well, I think that's a twofold question. The first is, what kind of advice would I give for young people in terms of communication and figuring out work-life balance and figuring out what works for them. Finding a mentor is huge. Finding somebody who is doing something similar to what you're doing or doing something similar to what you want to be doing. And if it's not necessarily in the same industry, it's a mindset thing. So finding people you can have dialogue with, what's worked, what's not worked, how did you negotiate this? You often find people going into jobs and they're applying to jobs just for the sake of applying for a job, not for the sake of being fulfilled. So understanding, okay, what are your what are the things that you're going into and that you have to have in order to be successful?
So start at square one, first of all. Is it really where you want to be to begin with?
Yeah, like is this my ideal role? Is this going to get me to the next step? Is this part of a stepping stone, or is this just a way to get a paycheck? And sometimes you have to take those paycheck jobs because that's going to help you get to where you need to be. But you can, if it's not a salary, it could be traditional benefits, it could be flexibility, it could be travel capabilities, it could be having the tools to be successful. So for me, I'm a big HubSpot user. So having tools that allow me to be successful in managing a database and doing email marketing and creating marketing campaigns and stuff like that. That's a preferred tool that I need to be successful. So when I'm working with companies, whether it's from a freelance standpoint or an employee standpoint, that's often one of my questions. Do you have it? And if you don't, would you be interested? Or and is it something that you would consider? I think also for women, especially women who are trying to have families, or even men who are trying to have families, being able to have that conversation early on if that's something that's coming down the pipe. So, hey, my husband and I, or my wife and I, are trying to have a family, and what are the benefits that come around that? Could I work from home a few days a week? Could I, is there some type of paternity or maternity leave? Those are important questions to ask that are not traditional,
Yeah, I think I'm gathering. So one, we went from, starting with square one, understand what you're doing and why you're doing it. If it is a paycheck job, get that paycheck and then start working on what it is that you really want to do, or if it is what you really want to do, that's great. Second, being able to leverage the tools around you, whether most of them being technology. I think that's what we're talking about. And then third is understanding what's available to you and negotiating with your management and being flexible and patient, probably. And I kind of want to talk about the tools a little bit, because you do a lot of remote work. So what tools do you use that help you collaborate with your colleagues, employees? How do you get together? Do you do a lot of this virtually as we are now? Or what are the tools you use to co-locate?
So I said it before, I'm a big HubSpot user. So there's a lot of ways that you can collaborate inside of that tool. It's a sales and marketing tool. I use Basecamp for project management. So it allows me to have, they have what's called campfires, which is kind of like a Slack, which is essentially a group chat. And there's message boards, and there's to-dos, and I can create templates and stuff in there, so I'm not reinventing the wheel every time. And then as far as collaboration with the face-to-face stuff, I use Skype or Google Hangout, GoToMeeting. It kind of depends on the people that I'm talking to and what they're comfortable with, or the purpose of why we're getting together. And I wanted to go back a little bit to some of the points that you were making in communication. I want to make sure that I reiterate that having a mentor is critical, and not feeling boxed to one mentor, but being willing to have lots of mentors or business coaches or speaking.
Do you have mentors now?
100%.
Do you?
100%. Yeah, probably. I feel like I have like at least a handful that I talk to on a regular basis for different reasons. So
that's wonderful. Do you and another girl I interviewed yesterday, it seems to be like the one thing that you two use. So how do you find a mentor? To be honest with you, or candid, I've had a couple mentors, and some of them, they had my interests at heart, and then others I wasn't so sure. So how do you find that good mentor-mentee relationship?
I would say putting a plan together, just like you would with a client, a potential client, or saying, okay, we're going to do this is what we're setting out to accomplish over this time period, and here are the goals that we have set for this time period. This is the budget that I have. These are the things I'm trying to accomplish, and setting some benchmarks along the way so that, in 3 months or in 6 months, you're able to see, okay, here's where we started and here's where we are now. Is this working or is this not working? And sometimes you have to be willing to say, like, you've gotten me to this point, but now I need to focus on this. So I think that, this mentor-mentee relationship has ended, but I want to continue to being friends with you, and I want to continue to keep in touch on a personal level. But in terms of engaging, like, I think it's time for me to focus on my personal, my speaking or my workshops, or my personal development, and maybe it's me getting a workout coach or doing some meditation or whatever. You have to understand, I guess, to bring this full circle, you have to know where you're starting and where you want to end up, and what the expectations are for the life of that relationship. So after 6 months, if you're vibing and it's working, then start another engagement. Especially if this is a paid engagement. If you've got a mentor that is like someone you look up to, and you meet up for lunch, and you connect every now and again, then those are good to kind of nurture and cultivate, and you should have as many of those as possible. Whether they're older than you or younger than you, or in a different field, that's just a part of building a network. But if you're doing a paid engagement, then you really have to understand where you're starting and where you're finishing and what you're trying to accomplish in that time, and be willing to reevaluate.
I think that outside perspective and being able to kind of have that third person there, and to see and to bounce your ideas off of how you're feeling at the moment, even, that's very valuable to, one, keeping sane, but kind of milestones, whatever they are, if they're personal or professional. With that in mind, my last question of the interview, it's always saying among my interviewees, and because we're talking about goals right now, I feel that it's relevant. Do you have a personal mantra or a saying that you sort of keep close to heart as you work towards your goals, or maybe that help you overcome adversity and sort of rough patches? I think that it's important to talk about this because everyone has sort of a different moral compass that they follow, and it helps them guide their decision making in general.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of an oldie but a goodie. Be the change you wish to see in the world. For me, if I don't like it, change it. And if I'm not willing to change it, then I can't really be bothered or complain about it. So, if it's working, then, keep doing it, but be willing to be better and pivot where you have to. And then, if it's not working, then, change it. If you don't like it, change it.
That's great. Yeah. I like to think if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But obviously, don't stick to something if you realize it's not working. Don't keep trying to force it, right?
Well, and also don't feel like you have to be content either. Things do get stale. So even though it's not broken, be willing to take a step back and see, is this working to its best potential? And sometimes having that outside perspective can help you see whether it is or not.
That's perfect. Well, thanks again, Caitlin, for your time today. I really appreciate your insights, and I think my audience will appreciate them as well. So thanks again for meeting with me today.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.